All right, welcome to Module 1 of the exercise class. In this module, we're going to be talking about how exercise works. So, you've probably seen a lot of people exercise. If you've gotten to the point of purchasing a product, you've probably seen plenty of YouTube videos that tell you exactly what to do, what to eat, etc. But all of these are telling you what, not why. And I think it's important to understand the why before you start thinking of the what. So, how does exercise work? Well, think of it like this. Our bodies, and the bodies of many other animals, were created in order to best help us survive. If we were better at surviving, then we would live longer, have more kids, and our kids would inherit our genetics, which allowed us to be better at surviving. Over time, the species that couldn't adapt to the environment died. And what was left were the species that could adapt to the environment. Why? Like I said, they survived more, they had more children, and so of course they're going to be the dominant species. Humans must be able to adapt to their environments, and the way that we do this is very complex. We do it in so many different ways, and that's the beauty of exercise, is that you can exercise to do anything. Literally anything. You can exercise to climb walls, you can exercise to jump horse hurdles. Humans can do pretty much anything that they'd like, as long as they train for it well enough. Obviously, there are realistic limits, but essentially, the way that exercise works is that it leverages the natural system of adaptation that humans would need to survive. And this is important. This is very important. The effect of most exercise solely bases itself upon how intense you're exercising. And the reason for this is it's pressure. Intensity is pressure. Pressure for your body to change. Pressure for something to be different so that you have a better chance of survival. So, for example, when you do hypertrophy training, you can get muscle hypertrophy in a lot of different ways. But one of the biggest things that happens is more mitochondria find their way into your muscle. Mitochondria, powerhouse of the cell, they power your muscles with ATP, right? So when muscles get bigger and there's a lot more mitochondria in the cell, guess what happens? There's more energy for the muscle, and thus the muscle can lift more and for longer. Why do you think the muscle adapts that way? For example, when we're just doing some hypertrophy training, because it needs to push against pressure, which is telling it you need to pull heavier weight, you need to pull weight for longer. So this happens because you're training very intensely. It happens because you're training intensely enough for your body to think that if this is a consistent stressor, we're going to die. And I'm not saying that you need to train to the point of killing yourself. Obviously, you shouldn't hurt yourself. However, it's important to train very intensely whenever you are training because, again, we're literally fighting survival. We want our body to think that we must change to survive because that is ultimately the reason that we change in the first place. The way that each mechanism of change works varies widely based on what you're doing. For example, if you want a bigger range of motion, you stretch because you're pushing your range of motion further, right? And the way that that actually changes your body is totally different from something like hypertrophy or something like strength training. For example, when you train for hypertrophy, an effective technique is to focus on metabolic stress. So that means pushing your muscle into that burn feeling, building up those byproducts of the exercise that you're doing. And that challenges the muscle and says, okay, wow, we need a stronger energy system. The way that that works, sometimes your body creates more blood vessels and the muscle gets larger, right? The main one we want is the muscle gets larger, even though, yes, it's a little bonus. You get more blood vessels and you get better at delivering energy to the muscle. But compare that to something like strength training, where people lift super heavy. I mean, 3 to 5 reps, right? That's where they're failing in. So they lift a weight 3 times and then they're done. Like that's their set. Why do you think that works? Because it's super heavy. Okay, and how do they adapt? Totally different from hypertrophy. Yes, sometimes the muscle gets bigger because that helps them leverage the weight better. However, the biggest adaptations are neuromuscular. The connection between your brain and your muscle gets stronger. You can fire more motor neurons at the same time, which makes you stronger. Secondly, tendon strength. Your tendons get stronger, which means the muscle can transmit force more effectively, which means your muscle gets stronger. Ultimately, though, In order to get better at these specific things, what we have to do is train for them specifically. You see, you can't just be an everything athlete. I dislike hybrid athletes, not because of their philosophy, but simply because you're losing out on everything for everything. It doesn't make sense. If you want hypertrophy, focus on hypertrophy. If you want strength, focus on strength. Don't choose hypertrophy and then say, okay, I'll do a lot of strength work too, though. Because not only do these have different ways of happening, but the ways that they happen can interrupt each other. You see, if you want to be a sprinter and you want to be a bodybuilder, typically you have to choose one or the other. And why is that? Because sprinting actually blunts muscle growth. So this means that if you are sprinting and you're training for hypertrophy and you're training for strength, you're fatiguing your nervous system. Again, like we said, you're training your nervous system whenever you're training strength, right? So you're fatiguing your nervous system, but you're also fatiguing your muscle itself. But all of the signals to build muscle here are being blocked by your sprinting. And so as a hybrid athlete, you make the minimal gains in everything. You make smaller gains in everything, but the bonus is that you make gains in everything at the same time. Exercise works because our body is adapting to a consistent, intense state. So if you lift super heavy one day for a month, like you just say, you lift super heavy Monday, and then 30 days later, that's when you lift again. You're not going to make progress. You're probably not going to make progress because unless you're already extremely fatigued, or unless somehow you can squeeze out an absurd amount of volume and intensity in that one session, your body doesn't see it as consistent enough to actually change by. It said, dang, that almost got us that time, but it's not happening again. So we'll keep a little bit, but we're not going to keep the whole shebang. You know what I'm saying? You see, because your body wants to survive. That's what it's for. You are a surviving robot. Your whole purpose is to survive and reproduce. And so if it doesn't push you to survive and reproduce, why does your body care? In fact, muscle is a very expensive piece of tissue. It's much more dense than fat. So a pound of muscle versus a pound of fat, your body would prefer to have a pound of fat. Not only because fat gives you energy, but because muscle is significantly more expensive to have than fat. Remember when I was talking about the mitochondria that go into your muscle cells? Yeah, those cost energy. You see, the energy that they create for your muscles, it doesn't just poof out of thin air. Those cost energy. And so as you build more muscle, your total calorie intake goes up, which is costly on your heart, which beyond that, another thing that's costly on your heart is being heavy. And having a lot of muscle makes you heavier. I mean, I'm 211 pounds. And my heart is carrying that around every day. This is why bodybuilders who are like super jacked on steroids, a lot of the time, their biggest problem, their heart is growing bigger because of the steroids, and their body's growing bigger. So their heart is pushing so heavy just to keep them walking that eventually they die of heart failure. And you can find this yourself. You'll notice that a lot of the reasons people die on steroids is heart failure. They literally have a heart attack and die because their heart can't keep them going. Their heart's not strong enough and they're too heavy and they cause too much energy. But I'll summarize it for you. Exercise works because we are animals that adapt. Exercise is meant to prompt an adaptation. And in order to prompt that adaptation, we have to tell our body that we are doing something intense that pushes our limits consistently over a long period of time. If we don't do that, whether we don't do it intense enough or we don't do it consistently enough, then our body has no desire to adapt. If it's not intense enough, our body can already handle it and thus has no reason to adapt. If it's not consistent, our body has no reason to sustain the adaptation because we aren't hit with it frequently enough, and the last time we were, we survived it. Hey, this is Postscript. I just want to let you know, thank you for watching this module, and if you found something useful from it or you want to add to it, you can either message me on school to give me direct feedback on it, on something you need specified, or you can make a post about it. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's because it is a free sample course for my school community seasonal lifters. If you're interested, go in the description and I'll link it right there.